topic of foreign aid. Almost immediately, I found that the fundamental effectiveness of aid is a hotly debated issue within the realm of foreign assistance. I decided that this would be my topic of exploration. Does foreign aid really work? I will begin by briefly explaining what aid is. Aid is the assistance of money, medical or basic living supplies, or military equipment or personnel, provided from one country to another, usually affected by a natural disaster or economic, health, or political instability. There are two main overarching categories of aid, and these are government-run and sponsored organizations and non-government organizations, or NGOs. NGOs such as the Salvation Army International and World Vision deliver development and emergency aid to countries worldwide. NGOs rely on money from a variety of sources, including individual donors, foundations, corporations, and governments in some cases. However, when they do accept money from governments, the use of that money cannot be directly tied to government wishes. In other words, governments cannot dictate how or where that money is spent. On the other hand, government agencies such as USAID and the United States African Development Foundation are directly funded by the US government and carry out the wishes of that government or the president, surrounding political agreements or obligations. The amount of money that a government agency can use for a time period, program, project, or activity is determined by the Office of Management and Budget. Once the budget is determined, usually about 2 years in advance of each fiscal year, the agencies begin to plan on how to implement the appropriated funds. In the year 2016, the US spent approximately $11 billion on foreign assistance worldwide, and this accounts for about 1% of the US's federal spending. The largest amount of money was spent on health-related issues and services, with $3.34 billion, with humanitarian assistance close behind, with $2.88 billion. Other categories of spending include peace and security, democracy, human rights and governance, education and social services, and economic development and environment. Now that I've outlined the basic functions and policy of foreign aid, I'm going to speak about what I have found in the realms of how aid has benefited and how it has hurt countries. I will also go into the specific factors that contributed to that success or destruction. I will then speak about what I believe is true and share my personal opinions about the topic, and conclude by sharing some solutions to the established issues and ways that we can improve our foreign assistance policy. I began my research by pinpointing recent successes in the world of foreign assistance. An example would be the Ebola outbreak. The Ebola virus infected over 700 people and killed approximately 450 in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. In response to the outbreak, USAID led a US government effort to contain and eliminate the virus. An estimated $1.4 billion was spent to fund this effort. The agency worked with UN and NGOs to bring healthcare professionals into the infected areas and to increase the number of healthcare facilities and burial areas, hoping to contain the virus. Whether the gradual die-out of the virus was directly due to efforts like USAID's is hard to prove, but the agency's work definitely helped to contain the virus. USAID's ability to quickly respond to the spread of Ebola was very beneficial. Their willingness to work with other nations and agencies to achieve the goal of containing the virus was a huge part of why their efforts were successful. They are currently continuing to work with other nations to properly prepare Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia with the resources they will need to combat a future outbreak of Ebola. After researching aid successes, I switched gears a little bit and focused on the times when aid did not work as well. After researching specific countries where aid has not worked as intended, I have come to the conclusion that the foreign aid system has 3 fundamental problems that inhibit aid. These 3 problems are corruption, aid dependency, and political agenda or motivation. To help explain the issue of corruption, I'll share some facts about the country of Nepal. In April 2015, Nepal was affected by an earthquake with 7.8 magnitude, which killed 4,800 people and caused an estimated $10 billion in damage, which accounts for about 50% of the country's nominal GDP. Since April, more than $4 billion have been donated to the country, yet very little has changed within Nepal since then. This can be partially attributed to the large amounts of corruption within the country, within the middle levels of government in the country. Lawmakers and government personnel hoard massive amounts of money, or distribute it to one specific area only, often leaving the areas with the most destruction with little to no money. There is a stark and growing separation of caste within Nepal, and aid is not helping to solve the problem. The Hindu caste system in Nepal, illustrated here, begins with the Brahmin, or the priests and academics, which are believed to be direct descendants of the gods. After the Brahmin come the Kshatriya, or the warriors and the kings, and then the Vaishya, the merchants and the landowners. That is typically where the money donated in aid comes to a stop. It usually does not make it to the lower castes, or the Shudras, or the untouchables, which are the lowest levels in the caste system. And often, these are the people that need the money, or could benefit from the money the most. The second problem, political agenda or motivation, is when a foreign government or organization is present in a country receiving aid. The governance of that country shifts its perspective to please the agency administering aid, instead of focusing on what it can do to make its citizens better off. When government agencies go in with the goal of helping the people of the country, they often influence the local government in a way which affects the local people in a negative way. This alone can slow or halt the rate of development in these countries, in which development is crucial in the goal of recovering from a natural or political disaster. The nations or agencies themselves can also have alternate motivations when administering aid. They are often motivated by political agendas or donor support, which brings us to the third issue, aid dependence. There is a limit to the amount of time aid can be present in an area before it begins to have negative effects. This limit is often surpassed. Whether it is because of political agenda or continuing donor support, prolonged aid can seriously hinder the economic and social growth of an area. When one specific small geographical area, such as a town or a village, receives astronomical amounts of aid, for an extended amount of time, the area's economy becomes flooded with free or low-cost items, which flushes out the local businesses and suppliers. However, aid agencies cannot stay forever, and when they leave, they are pulling the only resources that these areas have left out, leaving behind an arguably worse situation. To help explain the issue of aid dependence, I'm going to play a short clip from the series Poverty Care.
I had my eyes open to this through a friendship with Jean, and Jean was a friend in Rwanda, and he told me the story that after the Rwandan genocide, that he had a church from Atlanta that started sending over eggs and ended up just distributing eggs in his small community outside of Kigali. And this seems like a great thing to do, right? The church wanted to help after the genocide. But Jono, a few years before, had started a small egg business himself. He put this investment in all the materials that he needed to start this egg business. His business was starting to grow, it was starting to take off, and then all of a sudden, in one summer, there became this surplus of eggs that were flooding the market in his area. And so this desire that the church had to really take care of a need, it did take care of a need, but the problem is that it put Jono out of business. He ended up selling his hens, and then the next year the church decided to focus its attention to somewhere else in the world. Jono was out of business. No one else was there providing eggs, and so they had to bring the eggs in from another community. So this desire to help in that community, according to Jono, actually had a long-term negative impact on that community.
Now that I've outlined the established issues, I will share 3 solutions that I came across in my research. These solutions are investment, building economic connection, and remittance reform. The first solution would be to invest in countries rather than donating. Investing in small local businesses, as well as programs within the realms of healthcare and education, would allow local citizens to build sustainable generators of revenue. By revitalizing small local economies, there would be less dependence on foreign assistance, and the revenue would be in the hands of the people who need it most, the creators, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. Similarly, we should also build economic connection between developed and less developed countries. By buying goods from specific local communities and selling necessities such as health supplies, we could not only create a robust worldwide market, but also support emerging markets at the same time. The third solution, or remittance, the transfer of money from family members working abroad, proved to be much more gainful than aid. The amount of money sent in remittance exceeds the amount of money provided by aid annually. However, sending money abroad to relatives can often be very hard due to expensive sending fees and restrictions. One way to improve the living situation of people living in poverty in foreign countries would be to make the process of sending remittance easier and less expensive. In conclusion, I believe that there are helpful as well as destructive aspects to aid, and that if we modify or reform the way that we provide assistance to foreign countries by investing, forming economic connections through trade, and reforming our remittance policy to encourage the flow of capital to people living in hardship, we will significantly reduce the amount of people living in hardship and create a more unified world with an interconnected global economy.